All right, let's dive into Greenply Industries' second quarter results. It's Q2 of fiscal year 2025. We've got all the goods to get us through this. We've got their financials, we got an analyst presentation, even a letter to the Bombay Stock Exchange. So before we really get into it, I guess just to set the stage a little bit, Greenply is a pretty big name in India. When you think about like interior infrastructure, you think about plywood, veneers, MDF, all that stuff. And they've also got this strong reputation for quality and sustainability,
Mhm.
which is interesting because, I think about that industry and I think about, well, a lot of resources being used.
What's really fascinating here is that, they're publicly listed. So, transparency in their financials is key, right? Their performance directly affects investors and shareholders. So this is even more important for anyone following their journey.
Totally. So let's just jump into some of those top line numbers. They saw a 12.8% year-over-year increase in revenue, which hit 640 crores in Q2. Now, their profit after tax, or PAT, dipped just a little, about 6.4% year over year, and that landed at 18 crores. Now, before you get concerned, there's a little more to that story,
Yeah,
but
it's true. That PD dip might seem a little like, oh, what's going on? But the analyst presentation actually points out that there was a one-time income tax refund the previous quarter. And so that kind of boosted their Q1 PAT. But when you look at the whole first half of this fiscal year, things are much brighter. I mean, revenue jumped 22.7% year over year, and PAT, well, it more than doubled. So they're on a really strong path.
yeah. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit on their India plywood business, and this includes their subsidiaries. They saw a 7.5% year-over-year revenue growth in Q2. That hit about 514 crores, but get this. Their PAT for the first half of the fiscal year surged 40% year-over-year. So clearly, they're doing a few things right.
It looks like their strategy of really blending manufacturing with trading is a big part of this. It lets them respond to any changes in the market while still keeping a strong focus on profitability, which is a pretty delicate balance to achieve.
Here's another thing I noticed. So they're increasing their sales volume year over year, like 5.9%. But their average realization per square meter stayed about the same compared to last quarter.
Right, so that suggests they're keeping their prices stable. It could be a way to attract price-sensitive customers, especially in a competitive market like India.
Okay, let's talk MDF. This is a huge growth area for Greenply. In Q2, they posted a 42.8% revenue growth year over year, driven by, it's pretty amazing, a 30.7% surge in sales volume. What's behind that?
Well, it likely ties into them expanding their MDF production capacity over the last year. They've really positioned themselves to take advantage of that rising demand for MDF.
And if you dig into that analyst presentation, they've got this great breakdown of their MDF product mix. It's interesting, they're playing with the sales volumes and the pricing for the different categories.
Yeah, it's all about understanding the nuances of the market, right? It's not just about making more. It's about making what people need when they need it.
Okay. Something that's always important is financial health, right? Greenply has been managing their debt. They've reduced it by 20 cores in Q2. Their net debt to equity ratio, so that's how much debt they have compared to their equity, also got better. It went from 0.58 in June of 2024 to 0.46 in September. What does that tell us?
Well, that active debt reduction, it's a really good sign. It strengthens their financial position and gives them more flexibility to grow.
They've also streamlined their working capital cycle, bringing it down from 38 days to just 29.
So that's all about managing cash flow, getting paid faster, managing inventory better. That frees up cash for, well, lots of things.
Now, beyond just the numbers, Greenply is really making some moves with employee engagement, automation, and digitization.
What really stands out to me is their commitment to sustainability. They actually became India's first zero-emission plywood manufacturer.
I mean, that's a big deal, right? Especially with the demand for eco-friendly products going up.
For sure. Consumers really care about the environmental impact of what they're buying.
And geographically, they're not limiting themselves either. They're expanding their manufacturing, new facilities like this MDF plant in Sandila, Uttar Pradesh.
So it'll be interesting to see what impact will this expansion have on the whole Indian plywood and MDF market. I think Greenply's moves are going to make other companies rethink what they're doing. It's really interesting to see how Greenply's kind of playing the long game here. They're balancing that short-term performance with, well, investments in long-term growth and sustainability.
Totally. And I feel like sometimes we forget to mention the people. They've been recognized as a great place to work consistently, which tells you a lot about how they treat their employees.
That's huge. I mean, happy employees, they usually mean happy customers.
Mm.
And it shows they value their workforce.
Yeah, it does. And speaking of reaching customers, Greenply has this massive dealer network, like over 3,000 dealers, reaching people in over 1,100 cities, towns, and villages.
Wow, that's impressive. And they're not just sticking to the old ways of doing things. They're moving into e-commerce, digital marketing. They're really adapting.
They get it. People are online, and it's working, right? They've gotten all these awards like India's most trusted brand and best green manufacturing company. Those aren't just names. They mean something to customers.
Yeah, for sure. And their investors are noticing too. They've got big names like Mirae Asset, HDFC, Tata Mutual Fund.
That shows you how much confidence there is in their growth potential.
It really does.
So manufacturing, obviously a big part of their story. Their facilities are all over India, West Bengal, Nagaland, Gujarat.
Yeah, the geographic spread lets them be really efficient. They can meet the demands of different regions.
Right, and their production capacity is huge. Plywood and all those related products, their total capacity is 52.8 million square meters every year.
And for MDF, they've got a capacity of 240,000 cubic meters at their Vadodara facility. And with that new plant coming up in Sandila, that number is just going to get bigger.
Okay, so how do they stay ahead of the competition? Like, what are their secret weapons?
Well, a big one is innovation. They're constantly pushing boundaries, coming up with new stuff in the world of wood-based products.
That's how you stay relevant, right? Always looking to do things better, differently.
Exactly. And they've got tons of certifications, both global and domestic. So they're meeting really high standards for quality and safety.
That's got to make a difference, especially when there's so much out there that doesn't meet those standards.
Absolutely. And it's not just product innovation. They've been pioneers in influencer marketing. They've got programs that recognize contractors, carpenters, the people who actually use their products.
Oh, yeah, that's smart. You're building a community around your brand.
And they're taking it a step further by focusing on the health and well-being of those workers, too. It's a really responsible approach.
All right, let's look at some of the specific numbers here. In their profit and loss statement, there's a big change in inventories. It went from a negative euro 2,566.89 lakhs last quarter to a positive 814.28 lakhs this quarter. What's that all about?
Well, it could be a few things. Maybe they're ramping up production because they expect more demand, or maybe they're getting really good at managing their inventory.
So making sure they're not wasting anything. Got it. Now, their balance sheet shows their property, plant, and equipment value went down a bit, from 80,955.34 lakhs to 79,138.73 lakhs.
Probably just depreciation, or maybe they sold some assets. The interesting thing will be to see what happens to that number over the next few quarters.
Okay. Their cash flow statement shows their operating activities generated a solid 21,685.38 lakhs in the first 6 months of this year.
That's a really healthy cash flow. It means they're doing a good job of, making money from their core business.
Yeah. But they also had a big cash outflow, 7,070.58 lakhs from investing activities.
That makes sense, right? They've been investing in those expansion plans, particularly in the MDF segment. They're putting their money where their mouth is.
And on the financing side, there was another big outflow, 13,396.35 lakhs.
That could be a bunch of things: debt repayments, dividends, maybe even share buybacks.
Okay, so the revenue breakdown shows that plywood's still their biggest moneymaker.
But that MDF segment, it's growing like crazy. You can see why they're putting so much effort into expanding there.
Makes sense. Their shareholder structure shows the promoters have a majority stake.
Which is good for stability. But, they've also got those big institutional investors. That keeps everyone accountable.
So overall, Greenply looks like they're in a really good spot. They're growing, they're making money, and they're doing it sustainably.
But it's a competitive market, and things change fast. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate all of that.
Totally. One thing that's been on my mind is, how are they going to balance those big growth goals with their commitment to sustainability?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Can they get bigger without harming the environment?
That's something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on.
For sure.
Going through all this, it's clear that Greenply isn't just riding the wave, they're creating it.
They're making bold moves, investing in new stuff, expanding.
And that focus on a healthy mix of manufacturing and trading, that's a big part of it.
Right. They get to control quality, but also be flexible.
And they're not just focused on revenue, they want to make sure their shareholders are happy. That ROE focus, it's all about return on investment.
Exactly. And they're not forgetting their employees either. That great place to work recognition says a lot.
And you can't forget about technology. Automation, digitization, they're all in.
It's the only way to stay competitive these days.
But they're also looking outward, working with influencers, building partnerships around sustainability.
It's smart. They're creating a whole ecosystem.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Greenplay, it's clear they're doing a lot of things right.
Yeah. Strong financials, a smart growth strategy, and a brand that people trust.
What more could you ask for? Looking back at all this information about Greenplay, it strikes me how committed they are to finding that sweet spot between growth and, well, being financially smart.
Yeah, it's not just about growing as fast as possible, right?
Yeah.
They're focused on a healthy balance sheet. You can see that with their efforts to reduce debt
Mm.
and manage their working capital efficiently. That's impressive.
It's like, okay, we're building the skyscraper, but we got to make sure the foundation is strong, right? And that's where that focus on return on equity or ROE comes in.
Right on. It's not just about revenue. It's about making sure every rupee they invest is working hard. It's about generating a good return for their shareholders. That's a sign of a company thinking long term.
And it's not just about the numbers. They really seem to care about their employees. Getting recognized as a great place to work year after year, that's got to say something about their culture.
Absolutely. Happy employees.
Yeah.
They're usually more productive, more innovative, and that leads to better customer experiences. It's a win-win.
Couldn't agree more. Another big factor in their success, technology, automation and digitization, they're all in on that.
It's essential in this day and age. They're streamlining operations, improving their supply chain, and even personalizing customer interactions.
And it's not just about what they're doing internally. Greenply is actively shaping the industry. I'm thinking about those influencer programs and sustainability partnerships.
Right. Engaging with contractors, carpenters, the whole ecosystem. It's a smart way to build trust and loyalty.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Greenply Industries Limited, the picture is clear. They've got a strong vision for the future, they're performing well financially, they have a smart and sustainable growth strategy, and they're building a brand that people trust.
They're definitely a company to keep an eye on, not just for their financial success, but also for their leadership in shaping a more sustainable future for their industry.
And for our listeners, we'll leave you with one final thought. As Greenplay keeps expanding across India, what do you think the impact will be on the plywood and MDF market? What challenges and opportunities do you see on the horizon? Something to think about. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Greenplay Industries. Thanks for joining us.